welcome back, Lexi, and she's a rising star here on YouTube with she just shot up like a rocket from 200 to 1,300 in like 30 days. And I got with me someone who's very antsy. This is Pee Wee. Pee Wee can't see you, of course. She's got that little tongue hanging out. Well,
She
because
does.
she
So
can't
cute.
have no teeth. Dogs that don't got no teeth, their tongue kind of hang out.
Yes. She's
She's
so
not really
sweet.
here because she doesn't really like to be held because she's like this autistic dog that
Right.
you know she got the dogtism, the neurodivergent dog
Dog, right?
thing going on.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
okay.
we're just going to talk today a little bit more about caregiving and some of this other stresses, like what are the stresses on a person is when they start doing role reversals, when you as the caregiver are now slipping into the role of being more like a parental role and being that guardian and that in that place and there's not really that if you are like a person like me who's never had children,
Mhm.
then it comes like a real huge shock and a stressor when
Yes.
you're being asked to play a totally different role, and it's kind of hard to slip into that role, and then there's all this sadness and grief that comes into play. You have to let go
Yes.
of a whole lot of different things, and
A
so
whole lot. A whole lot. And that, the shift in roles from child or sibling or spouse to caregiver, that's like a big leap. And we all know that it's going to happen, but we just don't, when we get there, it's like, wow. Um, because you're no longer the child, you're no longer the spouse, you're no longer the sibling. You are like mom or dad or something now to your spouse or your mother or your father or whomever you're a caregiver to. And that
mhm.
role, sometimes we have that grieving process where we grieve that changing dynamic of, I know that when I became that caregiver for my mother actually started calling me mommy. And
Yeah,
it was so endearing. Hi, Mama Sushi. And it was so endearing. And, but at the same time, it was like, wow, I'm really in this thing. Now I am the mom to my mom,
yeah.
you know?
And that's when
And so you kind of grieve the old ways. You kind of grieve when my mother and I were very close, and my mother and I used to do so many things together and hang out together and do a lot of things. And then it came to the point where, you know, I basically had to do everything for her. My mother was always self-sufficient, did everything. She could sew, she could do arts and crafts, she could just do it all. It's like she hung the moon as far as I was concerned. But
mhm.
then when that role changed, it was like, now I'm the one that has to get up and make her tea in the morning, because she used to always do that by herself, or make her breakfast and make sure she's eating. And there was that time where, she didn't want to bathe or she couldn't take her own medicine. We would have to remind her and do those things. She wasn't the independent woman that I
Mhm.
always knew.
Yeah.
So,
Well, welcome Intero Active. Welcome, Mama
hi,
Susan.
Audra. Intero Active Bill is Audra.
Oh, Audra. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. It's what we had. What is it that some days mother does get her own breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
If it's now with the coffee, I have uh, a mechanical espresso press, which she'd never been able to figure out, but it's pretty simple. You put the coffee in, you tamp it down. But you have to make sure the grind is just right.
Right.
And that and there's a and there's a trick to that, and I don't have, and I'm using a blade grinder to grind, and so a lot of times, depending on the coffee hardness, I just go by the sound that that blade makes as it's cutting through that coffee to know when the grind is right. But sometimes the cheaper coffees it doesn't quite work right, so I got to go by the feel and go feel that so I can get the so if you don't have the right grind, if it's too fine, well, you put that water in there and you put that lever down, then it's like pushing water through concrete. And if the grind is too the pieces are too big, then you put the water in and you put that thing down and then it's just like whoosh, the water just goes through and nothing. And so if you get it just right, then it makes a fantastic cup of coffee. And so it takes somebody who has the patience to tinker with that. So that thing, she can use the pour over, but the instant is just kind of easiest.
Right. That's yes. Yeah, of course. Of course.
Yeah.
And that's something I just want to stop for a minute, Bill, and say, Mama Sushi, sending you some prayers. Take your time. Take your time. Um, with that, like with my mom, for instance, my mother could made her coffee, did everything. But at the point when she couldn't do at toward before she couldn't do things anymore, I would try to make everything easier. So I would make sure that all her tea was right there where she can get it, and her cup was right there, and her spoon, the sugar that she liked, everything was set out. So
Yeah.
all she had to do was come and get her water or, and those kind of things until it was to the point where she couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So making things easier, like you making it easier for your mom with the
Yeah.
coffee
Well,
now,
it's like the frustrating things is that okay, she goes to make herself a cheese sandwich, and but the cheese that she sees is I occasionally will buy Velveeta, and Velveeta is not real cheese, but I like to make macaroni and cheese like
Mm-hmm.
a couple times a month. It's like one of my favorite foods that I'm not supposed to have, and you know,
Right,
and it works better making it with Velveeta and Velveeta.
right.
But it's like okay, well, why didn't you just use the
Bill, are you frozen? Oh, you're reading.
no,
You're
I'm
reading.
not. I'm kind of shocked by what this that where Audra here has says that her daughter was killed on
Oh,
7.
yes, yes, Audrey. I'm so sorry. I'm sending you so much love.
Yeah. Oh, in
So much
2008. Yeah.
love.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
It wasn't like yesterday, but
No, but
uh,
still, that never, it doesn't matter.
it's the anniversary of that date. The anniversary of the anniversary of my father's passing was on 6/24. But nevertheless, as you know, there's the Velveeta, and I think well, but then the other cheese is just right there in front, and it's plenty of time
Right.
when there's stuff in plain sight and you can't see it, and I'm thinking, well, what or that, or this is where you put the milk type thing in the wrong spot, and then instead of going milk on a cereal, it goes vegetable broth or chicken broth or something like that. 'Cause
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
it looks exactly the same, and
Right.
whether and it makes me kind of wonder what the mechanism is there. Is it like that this we're just looking at objects that look alike, and then there's the time is not taken to actually read what's on there anymore? Is that what
Yes.
is going on? Is that we're not as we get older, we don't take the time to pay attention anymore?
No,
Or
we don't. And one of the things is I also want to say welcome Elizabeth because I did not say that before. Hi Elizabeth and Audra. I'm so sending you so much love because losing a loved one, but losing a child, I don't know what that's like. And I pray to God that I never have to know what that's like. But I'm
yeah,
sending you so much love, my beautiful friend, so much love. And yes, Elizabeth,
thank
Velveeta
you.
makes everything better.
Yeah, thank you for being here,
But
Elizabeth.
getting back to what you were saying, Bill, um, it's that instant gratification that we talked about last time. When you get to a certain age, and this is something that we studied in sociology when I was in college, And when you get to a certain age, you want that instant gratification. That's why somebody older who's cooking turns everything up on high. My mother used to turn everything up on high and then go walk away and leave it. And I'm like, my God, you're going to burn the house down. Or,
Mhm.
you want that stuff right now. You don't read labels, you don't do anything. They want it now. And a lot of times they think that they remember how they used to do something or whatever, and they don't any longer. And whether you have dementia or not, that happens to all of us. And
Yeah.
so it's that instant gratification,
Mhm.
that they're seeking right now because they want it now. Whatever is going on, they want it now. When you're in your 70s and your 80s and your 90s, you want it now. You don't want to have to wait for the process of how something gets made or anything. You just want that thing right now. So
Yeah.
that's difficult. It's very difficult.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of frustrating. It's like, okay, we're at dinner time, and there's the process because the dog, most of the times, the dog will not eat unless all of us are present. And little Pee-wee dog is a strange dog, and and then the light level has to be exactly right for the dog to eat too. So it's kind of
Right.
a strange dog. Okay, everyone else's dog is different and eats all the time, and so like when you go take the dog to the vet, or they have to give him a pill, and then say, well, yeah, we just give it some treats, and I said, well, you don't understand. The dog
Right.
doesn't eat treats. Well, just put it
Right.
in the peanut butter. Well, you don't understand. The dog doesn't like peanut butter.
Right.
And
Right.
we do this. And I said, I'm sorry, the dog doesn't like that. Can you get the pill? Can you
Yeah.
get that medicine in a liquid form or something like that?
Right.
Can't give the dog a damn. I gotta shove the pill down the throat because
Right.
if
But
I have
she
to give
doesn't
it,
have teeth.
it doesn't have a teeth, but it's not
Right.
just that. It's that for the dog, it's like okay, the dog only eats once a day, and then it only eats a very limited palette of food, and so yeah, and so so the vets just don't, a lot of they don't understand because all the other dogs are like these eating machines, and then
Right.
you run across a dog. Well, anyways, that's neither here nor there. So getting the dinner out and you're doing that. I serve mama up, and then while I'm plating up my food, she's saying, "Well, are you going to come and join us?" I said, "Well, I will be right there. Let me just finish plating up my food too." But
Right.
maybe the way that I have to, sometimes the way I do that is I'll plate mine up, and then I'll do the I'll do the dogs, and then I'll do mine, and then I'll do mama's, and then I bring it out pretty much kind of the same.
Together. Right.
Welcome,
Right.
welcome,
Yes.
welcome, Aaliyah. Yeah.
Hey there, Leah. Yeah, and uh Audra says it makes her think of the Willy Wonka girl. I think that was Veruca Salt, who I want it now.
Yeah, I
I
want
want
it
it
now.
now. Ah,
Yeah.
so yeah, it does. It does.
Mhm.
So yeah, and I just wanted to talk about just piggybacking on what we were talking about in that shift in roles as a caregiver. It's like when you start parenting your own parent, that can be dramatic. So that's a dramatic shift. And
Yeah.
a lot of us don't know how to handle that. And it can feel disorienting at times and even heartbreaking,
Mhm.
because you're doing something for somebody who, in your eyes, used to do everything. And
Yeah.
now they can't, and there's that saying, what is it? Once an adult, twice a child, or whatever they say. And
Yeah.
that is so true. It's so true for a lot of us. A lot of us, if we're lucky to get to that point, that we are the ages that we are, Bill. I was 56 when my mother passed.
Mhm.
And so my mother lived to be 89 years old. And that I had my mother for that long was a miracle to begin with. And a lot of my friends had lost their mothers when they were in their 20s. And so I still had my mother for quite a while. And my one of my best friends still has her mother. She's older than me. She's 65, I think. And her mother and my mother are the exact same age, born the exact same year, a month apart exactly. My
Yeah.
mother's birthday was November 11th, 11/11, and her mother's birthday is December 12th, 12/12. and her
Well,
mother is still
yeah.
here. And
Wow.
so, it's that role, but she can't do it. She's like, well, mommy, her mother has the same thing that my mother had, congestive heart failure. And so it's just a matter of time, and you know that. And at least she knows that. When my mother was going through that, I had no idea. So I had no
Mhm,
idea when my mother kept saying, "Oh my God, my anxiety, and I don't feel good, and everything." I didn't know what was going on. And I'm
mhm.
like, "Well, mommy, you don't have anxiety. So what's really going on?" And it was her heart the whole time, and I never knew. I never knew. I didn't even the context clues, nothing. Everything just went right over my head. I knew nothing. I knew nothing. And so it's nowadays, I know for me, like I tell my daughter every day, you will know, you will know whenever anything is going on with me. I'm going to tell you, because my mother just couldn't do any of that. She just couldn't. And
Well,
but
sometimes,
it's just hard. It's just a hard thing. It's just a hard thing.
but then sometimes when you're reading the signs, you can get it completely wrong, and which is why
Yes,
then you go to the doctor and you explain what you think is going wrong, and then they listen to you. Yeah. Well, let's go do some blood work and take an X-ray or something like that, and then you realize that you were completely wrong because
exactly.
you're not. You have to. These tests are kind of important for
Yes,
determining what
they're very important.
you
They're
know,
very important.
and
And my
and
mother, yeah, my mother was someone who did not. Towards the end of her life, she didn't want to go to the doctor. She didn't want to do any of that. We lived on the second floor walk up, and at that point, it was hard for her. Although, when we took her to the hospital to see what was wrong with her, she walked down the stairs of her own fruition, and she got into the car like a trooper and did it all, but she never came back. And that was something that I never thought that once she walked down those steps on Mother's Day 2021,
that was the
because it's
last.
all that she was never going to come back. So that's a whole nother issue in itself. That's a whole nother Oprah show
Yeah,
topic. But
my father's mother, it was something like that. She went into a hospital like on a Thursday, and then by Sunday she was gone,
yes,
and
yes.
and so
Yeah,
maybe
it's
struggling
hard.
with
My
the
mom lived for a
medication.
whole month. She lived for another month,
Yeah.
and just shy of about 4 days.
Mhm.
And yeah, so yeah, it was hard. And she wanted to come home because she's like, "Well, where's my stuff? When am I going home?" I'm like, "Well, after we got to get you better first." But I knew that she wasn't, because I had asked the doctor. I said, "Well, when are we going to be able to bring mommy home?" And she's like, "Oh, your mother's never coming home." And I was
Oh,
like, "Okay." That took me aback because I wasn't expecting that answer. and uh
yeah.
and so that was something to get used to. And then so she went into the hospice, and so I knew that she wasn't coming back. Her heart was only beating at 15%, so there was no,
Mhm.
and she was too frail and too old at that time to have any kind of surgery.
Mhm.
So yeah, so there was nothing that really could be done, to save her, or to maybe just prolong that, a bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. So yeah, and
So,
so I
but then
wanted.
you got
Mhm.
enough time to say your final goodbyes, right?
Yes, we did. We did get to say our final goodbyes because she lived for another month.
Yeah.
And in the hospice, we were able to do that. And I spent a lot of time with her there. I spent every day with her there, as much all the time I could spend with her. And
Yeah.
so yes, we did get to say our goodbyes, and they did let us know, like the day before, that that was probably going to be her last day.
Mhm.
And so we were able to, say goodbye to her. But that did not make it any easier. Even though I knew she was sickly and whatnot, did not. The depression and the sadness and everything that I endured for 3.5 years afterwards was very
Yeah.
tough. And thanks to Elizabeth, beautiful Elizabeth, and Ange, beautiful Ange, when they had their moon magic, and I was able to release all that. And that was the day that I gave that up, that I gave up that grief and that guilt. The
Mm.
guilt, I will always grieve, but the guilt I had over my mother having this congestive heart failure that I knew nothing about. And everybody's like, well, you're not a cardiothoracic surgeon. How would you know? You're not a heart doctor. How would you know? And I'm
Mhm.
like, I know, but I feel like I should have known something and I didn't.
Yeah.
And so that's the part that really, for me it was very difficult. I really, I mean, I went through therapy and everything to give me the tools to get through that, but that still didn't work for me. I cried every single day for 3.5 years, every single day. A day didn't go by that I did not cry and bawl the loss of my mother.
Mhm.
And
Now,
being her only child made that even worse for me.
so Audra has asked here, was
Yes.
your mother aware of you at the end?
Yes, she was, Audra. She was. She did have dementia. She was going into the early stages of dementia, and there was one funny time in the hospice where I was there because I had been there every day, and she would always be looking for me to be there, and I would sneak out at night when they would give her Adderall to make her so she can sleep because she wasn't resting, and she refused to lay down because she was scared. She knew that her heart, she couldn't breathe well. So she's like, I'm not laying down because if I lay down, I'm not going to wake up. So she would not lay down. So
Yeah.
she would be propped up in the bed all the way up, and she wasn't getting any rest. And so at night they would come in and they would give her the Adderall or whatever they would, Ativan, and that would put her to sleep. And so
Mhm.
this one day I was there and she says, I need to see that nurse out there. So I called the nurse in, and the nurse came in. I says, my mother would like to ask you a question. And she's like, who are these people? I don't know who these people are. And so the nurse looked at me and I looked at my mom and I said, Mommy, you don't know me? And she's like, it's my daughter.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm like, yeah, Audra, she knew me.
Yeah.
And
I
she knew my daughter.
yeah.
So yes, yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
when my grandmother was, like, in her last week of life, and she was in this house, and, um, all the family was kinda gathered around, and she kinda, like, slumped over, and then her middle daughter was an RN and said, "Well, I guess she's gone now." And then she woke up and kinda sat up, and then everybody was sorta crying and says, "Well, it sounds like somebody's gonna kick the bucket around here."
Wow.
And so, she was with the sense of humor, it's like, "Oh,
Ah,
sounds like someone's gonna kick the bucket around here." Well,
right. We thought you were, Grandma.
well, that was what she was kind of intoning, is that you thought I'd kick the bucket,
Right,
but I didn't.
right,
I'm still here. Is
right.
this okay?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And something else that I wanted to talk about too was about like the emotional landscape, the emotions that go along with the whole caregiving thing.
Mhm,
And basically, we just we have that guilt, like I just talked about, and we have anger and resentment and deep love that can all coexist all at
mhm,
once. And that's one of those are probably similar to the grieving process as well. There are so many stages to that we go through when we're grieving. And the importance of this emotional landscape really is to give ourselves grace, because as a caregiver, that is one of the most important jobs in the world. And
mhm.
besides being a parent, now that you're a caregiver to your actual parent. And so it's just, and yes, like Elizabeth said, it's not linear. It's not linear at all. We all go through so many different emotions and so many different things. Nothing is the same for any of us in this caregiving state.
Yeah,
Nothing is. And it's not a single emotion. It's a storm of emotions that change every single day. Every single day. One day you're frantic. You don't know what to do. The next day you're like, okay, well, now we've got mom somewhere, or we've got dad or auntie or whomever, our husband, our wife, whoever we're taking care of. And okay, they're doing better, they're doing okay today, so maybe there's hope, or maybe there's something. And but you know deep down inside that this is not going to change. This is only going to progressively get worse and
Mhm.
worse and worse, you
Yeah.
know? And so just learning to deal with those things, because we all go through the love that we feel, then the guilt that we feel that our loved one got sick in the first place, or can't do the things that they used to do, the resentment that we have towards that, and
Mhm.
the deep compassion. And it's just really, we're allowed to feel all those things.
Yeah. Well, I
We
wanna
are
interrupt you
allowed to
for
feel all those
I wanna
things.
interrupt you for just a second because we had
Sure.
Jeff came in and Ramon came in, and I wanted to say hello to them all, and blessings and peace to you, and Nancy's Crone. I haven't seen Nancy here for a while. And
Hi
then
there, everyone.
there was something that I wanted to kind of talk with Audra here just a second when my father died in a car accident, and so I didn't get the chance to say goodbye.
Mhm, mhm.
And so for the from the like the day that my father passed up until his funeral, I went to the roadside where he died, and I sat in the ditch for like an hour. I would just sit there, and luckily no cops came by to ask what was going on. I mean, because then what was I supposed to do? Is you're just sitting here in a ditch, and of course, then I would have to say, well, my dad died here, and I'm just
Right.
sort of sitting by that spot where he died.
Yes.
But they would probably say, oh, you can't be here. And I think, well, why not? Why can't I be in the
Right.
spot where my dad died? And so I didn't get a chance to say goodbye. And then also there was this for you said for 3 years that you grieved. Well, you know what?
Yes.
For 3 years, about 3 years, every time a white pickup drove up this road, I thought, oh, my daddy's coming home.
Yes, Bill.
It was like 3 years, but then then it passed, and then I don't have the pain anymore. It's been the pain
Yes.
disappeared quite. I think it was probably there was somebody an expert that said there was roughly about 8 years is how long it takes the human heart to heal from a deep
Wow.
heartbreak. And
Yes.
death of a
Yes.
the death of a of
Mm,
a of a loved
confirmation.
one is a deep heartbreak, and a or like a breakup, a bad breakup.
Yes.
Somebody,
Yes.
it takes a while. So some of that grieving process, sometimes with those like marriage breakups and those
Hmm,
and
hmm.
those love relationship breakups, the grieving process begins long before the actual breakup occurs because
Even occurs. Yes, that is true. That
and
is
there's
so true.
realization, and then the breakup happens, and then because that's where you would see, well, how is it that this person can go from this relationship to that relationship? They can go from one marriage to another
Yes,
just
to
that
another so
much.
quickly.
It may just be
Yes.
that they that healing process had already happened, and
Right.
or maybe or whatever, and
Hmm.
so so but like I was saying, that the what did dad has been gone 13 years. And so it was that every like June, I would get, starting about a month before, I would
Hmm.
get super anxious, and I didn't really realize why, but it was just that I was coming up to that date. Well, then there was a year that it didn't happen.
Right.
The date came. I knew that this was the month, and then but I didn't feel those feelings. I didn't feel that anxiety or that
Anymore.
depression.
Yes.
And so it's almost like now, looking at 13 years ago, it's almost when I look at like pictures on the wall, I see my face and dad's face. Sometimes when I talk, I hear
Hmm.
his voice coming right out of my voice.
Yes.
It just comes right out, his word.
Yes.
And then now, of course, if I go and start quoting from Henry David Thoreau, then I know that I finally become my dad. If he had that book memorized, he had a lot of these Walden Pond, he had a lot of these books memorized. I got a lot of stuff
Right.
memorized too,
Right.
but nevertheless. But so when you say you're sorry, I know when I talk about these things, I'm not fishing for sympathy,
Mhm.
or my sympathy fishing for condolences because that time has already passed, but this is just a memory of I know that there's a sense of when people are when you're talking about this to people, they don't know what to say, but maybe what you say is just absolutely nothing because that's because it's like,
Right.
and sometimes when you're talking about the loved ones that have gone, you're not it's really that conversation is significant, but it's not that much more different than, "Oh, it's gonna rain tomorrow."
Exactly.
It's part of your life. It's part of your life, and
Right.
but
Right.
but
Right.
it's like you when you say, "Oh, it's gonna rain tomorrow," and so you say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." That's
Mhm.
like an inappropriate response, and so
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
people respond to
Yes.
it, I guess that's a point where it kind of, I kinda get I guess that's me, that's just a me thing, I get kinda bothered by
Right.
responses of but yeah,
Yeah.
Elizabeth said
It
something
doesn't. I
about
know
listening.
Elizabeth says, yes, sometimes all you need to do is listen. Exactly. And
Yeah,
Elizabeth was saying also that sometimes it can take a lot longer to move past certain things, longer than, like the experts say, 8 years. And
yeah,
sometimes it can take longer. It's been 4 years for me since my mother passed, June 7th, 2021.
yeah,
And to me, it's like yesterday. But I know that I'm past that now because I did release that energy and I released that guilt that I had. I'll
mhm,
never get over her being gone because she
yeah,
was my best friend. She was my ride or die, always here for me. And but I know that she's here. And I couldn't hear that before. Like people before would be like, "Oh, just get over it." Well, I will
yeah,
never
yeah,
get over it, and we will
yeah.
never get over losing a loved one. Never.
That's
And
what
for
that's what my brother-in-law said to my
Yeah,
sister.
I don't like that because that's, to me, that's very rooted and sensitive.
It is,
Don't
and
tell me to get over something. I will never get over that. I will never get over it.
mhm, you're right.
Some people deal with things differently, but I will never get over it. And I
Mhm.
think that's such an insensitive thing to say. And I'm with you, Bill. Sometimes it's just the best thing is to say less.
Yes,
Just say less. Don't say anything. Just don't say
yeah,
anything.
and so I think that a lot of times I said but then I find myself doing that thing too because you don't know what to say, but I just remember, like, the day that my dad passed, and I kind of was on going on Facebook, and I was talking with somebody, and said, "Well, what do you," this person said, "Well, what do you want me to say?" I says, "Don't say anything.
Anything. Right. Don't say anything.
There's nothing you can say because
Right.
there's nothing that anybody can say
No, there's not.
to you
There's
about it.
really not. There's
And
really
the only
not.
thing that,
And yeah,
so
there's not.
yeah, and because the only thing that
Exactly.
people can do is just be present for you.
Yes, just be present.
Be
Exactly. Just
present.
be
Yeah.
present. Hold
Mhm.
that space. Learn how to hold that space. You don't have to say anything at all. At all. And
Yeah.
Elizabeth says that she saw something along the lines of, instead of asking, how did they die? Because that's something everybody wants to know. Well, how did they die? Ask, what's your favorite memory of your loved one? What's your favorite memory of the person who left you? Which I love that. I love that so
Yeah.
much. I love that. And yes, and Mary, hi, Mary. Mary is my dear friend for over 25 years.
Well,
Hi,
welcome, man.
Mary. And Mary says everyone grieves at different times
Mhm.
and in different ways. And
Yeah.
yes, we all do. That's the same thing that Elizabeth said. It's not linear. It's
Mhm.
there's not a straight line for any of us. We all do things differently, and we all receive information and give out our grief or whatever
Yeah.
differently.
And
We all do.
we offer support with other people because everybody not everybody goes through this because some people don't get that they're either their relationships have been so broken that they don't ever
Yes.
get to their parent, but everybody experiences this in
Yes.
one fashion or another, and but in everybody struggles with it because because especially with the family, those genetic bonds, because those genetic bonds are
Mm,
so deep,
Yes, they're very
regardless
deep. They're very
regardless
deep.
of what the status of that
Hmm.
relationship.
Yes,
I mean,
indeed.
and
Indeed.
the response, let's say if it's like someone whose dad was abusive,
Mm.
and they
Right.
still,
Right.
and so like this week, I can't remember exactly the day, but one of my friends, Nathan, who he passed away in 2018. He hung himself, and he had it was like right around this time in 2018, and I then there was another one of my classmates who died of mysterious cause, and I was just going to go like to Nathan's Facebook page and say, hey, because he had kept in track with all these people that we went to school with that were not popular and that were kind of outcasts, and so he knew all these people, and so if I wanted to go find, well, did you know what happened, did you find out what happened, so I went to go to Nathan, and because a couple of years before that Lynette passed away, she killed herself too, and so she was like a person I had like a crush on since I was like 8 years old or younger, and I think it
Yes.
was middle school, I think it was like it was middle school, and so when Jim was her cousin, and he passed in 2018. They think he drowned, or some people think he got was like was murdered. They don't really know because
Wow.
all they know is that they there was this
Mhm.
dog that was waiting. There was just a bridge right just down the street, right across from where my grandmother lived, and the dog was there waiting, and then they found his body just on the bank of the river underneath the bridge, and then that was like I don't know exact. I think it was like maybe July 6th or 7th, and then I and I think this may have been the day that Nathan passed away. But Nathan, he um he had a meth addiction, and
Mhm.
he had a lifelong meth addiction, and then in the last couple years of his life he spiraled into extreme mental illness with it, but he was still trying to keep his business. He was a licensed land surveyor, and then he got in trouble with it because he was like hearing voices coming out of the fan. What his appliances were talking to him, and so then
Wow.
he was like shooting guns off in his house, and then his neighbors of course called the cops, which is what they would do, and they
Mhm.
came and picked him up, and then he was in jail. But then he they with stipulation that he had to stay straight, not go back to the meth.
Right.
But he had the day that he died, the next day he had a drug test which he knew he wouldn't pass, and so he killed himself because he didn't want to go
He didn't
back.
want to take the drug test.
He didn't want to lose his professional license.
Yes. Yes.
He
Oh
didn't
my
want to lose
goodness.
his professional license, and he didn't want to go back to jail. And so he took his own
Yes.
life. And then and so that's but Nathan's his his death was really hard on me. And then because I actually worked for him for a little while, but it was like a situation where I didn't know he had such a terrible temper.
Mm.
40 something, and I was thinking, or so I'm just too old to have to deal with some adult person's temper problem. And so I said, this ain't gonna work for us. And then like 6 months after I quit and I went back to the casino, I had been at the casino and then I quit the casino, then I went back within like a period of 6 months.
Wow.
And then Nathan called me up to apologize, and he was very sorry but I couldn't quite figure it out. I thought it was like booze because there was that the I couldn't, but I never, for the life of me, thought it was hard drugs. I
Right.
never thought it because I never smelled because he had another assistant that smelled like beer, like stale beer in the morning, and he had that booze smell. And but with Nathan, I didn't smell nothing on him, and I think, well, maybe it's just whiskey, or maybe he's just drinking hard alcohol, maybe it's that. But the fact that he had a meth addiction, that it never crossed my mind. Yeah.
And it wouldn't, because you would not be thinking of that. You definitely would not be thinking of that at all. At
Yeah.
all. Elizabeth was saying of our conversation about having emotional intelligence
Yeah.
and dropping friends.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. I've noticed too, and that I don't know what getting on that what Elizabeth is saying, the dropping friends. I noticed too that for myself and my daughter, that a lot of people have dropped us in the loss of my mother. So, in the
Mhm.
loss of my mom, all of the family members who we moved to this state for, we moved here 23 years ago from Arizona. And we moved here because my mother wanted to come here because I have cousins here and whatever. And not blood relations, but these were people who were my mother's best friends, children, and so on. And I've known them since before they were born, type of thing, since I was a little girl. And so they are our family for the most part. And we moved here because of them. And since my mother's passed, I don't hear from them at all. And I'm always the one to make the first move. So I just don't do that anymore. So I was looking at something the other day and I'm like, wow, I haven't talked to somebody in almost 2 years. I haven't talked to somebody else, I think, in 3 years, or in 4 years, because my mother's been dead 4 years. And so that's another dynamic as well.
Yeah.
When you become a caregiver and your person who you're caregiving for passes away. And like you were saying, Bill, about people either coming and saying things to you, or making the wrong statement after you've lost somebody or whatever. Well, it's the same thing. When somebody dies, people don't know how to deal with it, and people don't know what to say, so people just get away. People just go away.
Yeah.
They just go away, and they just cut you off altogether. It's the
Mhm.
ghosting. It's the
Yeah.
ghosting.
Yeah. The
And I
ghosting.
was never expecting any of that either. And so,
Mhm.
basically it's like my daughter and I against the world type of thing, because the family that we moved here for to be close to, we came with my mom, and they don't even talk to us anymore.
Mhm.
Or we don't see, they don't invite us. Every year, the 4th of July, I said to my daughter, I says, well, I know we're not getting the 4th of July. We got the pity Easter invite, the Easter after my mother passed. And we went to that, but it was the pity invite. They felt sorry for us, so they invited us, type of thing. But we have not gotten a Thanksgiving invite, a Christmas invite, any more Easter invites. 4th of July is when a lot of my nieces, nephews have birthdays in July. And so they always have a big cookout and a big get together and all of that. We did not get invited to any of those things. And so that's another thing that happens, when you lose a loved one. Sometimes it's your own family, or that who just, they're like, what, they're like, okay, they're like,
Yeah.
Aunt Jewel's dead. My mother's name was Jewel. So Aunt Jewel's dead. So we don't have to be bothered with them anymore.
Well, it's like
So
my father's family has never come and visited us since the funeral. Granted, we're like almost 100 miles away, and it's hard. Like in the 80s,
hmm
you can cross that distance way. Because Oregon is so much more has is more populated than it was in the 80s. So like in 1980s, I think the population of the entire state of Oregon was 1 million people, and I think it's like 3 to 5 times that right
I'm
now.
sure.
And then where
Right.
I
I'm sure.
live in is one of the passes to the coast, and so it gets the road that
hmm
uh, gets like what on well if it's like on a weekend you could get like 50,000 cars go by in a day.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, people going to Lincoln City. There's like the different
hmm
paths that there are through the Coast Range. There's the one in Seaside. There's the Sunset Highway that goes from Portland to Seaside. There's the one that goes from Salem to Lincoln City. And then there's one down to Corvallis that goes into Newport, and there's one at Eugene that goes to Florence, and then I think there's one or two more. but the mountains as you get south of Eugene get more they're harder to get around because they're bigger, and it's in that rogue mountains in there, and then there's just more of them, and so these are just major passes, and so people in Salem, they'll make a choice. They'll either go to Corvallis, which is like 30 miles down the road south,
Hmm.
and then they'll cross over into Newport, and then if they, you know, and then there's like then from there's one more. Then there's the first pass is through the Trask Mountains, which goes back through Yamhill County, Yamhill Carlton area in back of McMinnville, and there's the remnants of a plank road that existed where they went with horses, and then the early automobile where they may have taken a trip through the Trask, and it took you right into Tillamook, and because Tillamook was more of a 100 years ago, 150 years ago was a lot more. That was like a bigger center because if you think of like Tillamook cheese, Tillamook ice cream, well,
Yes.
that's all there, and it's an industrial and it's an industrial semi-coastal city, and but nevertheless, that's just kind of like a little lesson on where I live, and then why the road that I live on or near is so dangerous is because, and it's not a 4-lane road either. It's a this way. It's a 2-lane road, and then there are some places where they have concrete barriers to try to minimize the number of accidents. So I have talked about a little bit here how
Hmm.
in my neighborhood, everybody that lives here either has a relative that has died on that highway, or they have
Right. You said
raised
that.
somebody who
Yes.
died on that highway. And so, like, my
Wow.
dad died on that highway in going. Actually, he was going towards McMinnville. The last person to see my dad alive died on that highway, but he was going towards Salem. And then other neighbors, they had like one of them up the road. Well, they're all dead. The parents are dead, and they just have a couple of their children that are left alive. But youngest, their youngest kid, on that road, off on a little offshoot, they they slid right underneath a tractor trailer, and the car just got sheared right off the top, and that's how their daughter got decapitated when she was like 16 years of age. It just
Oh
slid
my goodness.
right underneath it because the tractor trailer, it was part, I think it was like almost like jackknifed across the street,
Yes.
and then she came flying down like at 100 miles an hour like kids do, and then that was it, and just bang, but so that was just like how. And then like my mom had a friend that's down, they fixed the road in a lot of different places where you could come up, and where they have overpasses and stuff where there are these dangerous intersections, but a person would come flying across here, and then they go right over the road, and then from one road into another, and and that's and that was it, because it was just it's so dangerous. It's such a dangerous road because
Right.
how.
Right.
And then like right along that road, there's two casinos. You know, there's two
Yeah.
casinos. It's just it has a, and then the casino that is right near is the largest casino in the state of Oregon, that I think it is. Well, I no, I believe it is. And it's probably, and it's one of the most wealthiest tribes in the state of Oregon too. And but yeah. Anyways,
Wow.
not that, it's just a little lesson, and it's also a spot where the West Coast Trail of Tears ended up.
Right. Right.
So in 1850, I think 1850 or 1860,
Yes.
when all these Trail of Tears, and they force marched, I think it was 23 tribes
Mm-hmm.
in California to and then into like southern Washington, but southeastern
Yes.
Washington. And so all these groups that they just force march right into this area right where I'm living, and this is what the place where I'm living is a spot where there is a Trail of Tears, and the
Wow,
final
Bill.
destination.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome,
I
Vic.
want to say welcome to, Audrey was saying on the last part of our conversation that yes, it's true, she was saying. And Mary says, Lexi, if you need me, I'm there for you and Zoe. Thank you, Mary. I know you always are. She always is. Hi,
Yeah.
Victor. Victor stepped in. Hi,
Yeah.
Victor.
Welcome, Victor.
So,
Yeah.
yes. Victor had a beautiful live last night. Well, his lives, I'm new to his live streams. And last night it was so beautiful and it's so calming and so loving there and everything. I really had such a good time there,
Well, it
which I'm
is.
sure you've been on some of his lives, Bill, before, have you?
Well, it's that his lives are either it's too early in the morning to me, or it's right during the time that I'm making dinner, and so
Okay,
it
right.
makes
Oh,
it.
that's right, because we're on such a big time
Yeah,
difference.
it's a
Oh,
3 hour.
no, right.
It's actually 2 hours a difference from me
For
between me,
you and Victor, right.
but it's still it's just that it's a timing thing, because when before we popped on here, because I was talking uh with Lexi about the challenges of going to the church or mother's church, and then
Yes,
and having talked with some of the members, and they said, well, just you just got to go to bed earlier, and then thinking, well, and my mother has issues, and I said, well, I said, well, I just I didn't. They said, well, I just didn't know that. I just did. Well, of course, they don't really want, some people don't like to talk about what their issues are, but
exactly.
you know
Exactly.
and so instead we just go to the church on the Zoom, and it makes it easier, and
Yes,
then you don't have to, and then you can always just turn the camera off and just listen in, and so
right.
in the sense that that there is that, and then you can pay attention if you want to pay attention. If you don't,
Right.
you don't, but it's there, it's present, and but never.
Yes.
And what
I
Victor.
know. I got a question like that a couple weeks ago on a Sunday in the live stream. One of the young people asked me, "Did I go to church that morning?" And I says, "Well, I did not go to mass, but I watch mass on television, which I do on Sundays." And I used to go when my daughter was younger. I went to mass. I was at that church 50 times. The priest would always say to me, Father Frank is like, "You're here more than we are." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, because my daughter was an altar server." And
Yeah.
she always, what do you call it? The baseball term, pinch hit for everybody else who couldn't come in or had something else to do. And a lot of times the young people and the teenagers, they didn't want to come and do altar service. So my daughter always did it. And so I was at every mass. And now I watch it from the convenience of my home. And I don't have the body anymore to go to church and kneel and do all those things that I used to. And I would rather watch it at my convenience. And I usually tape it. So if I can't watch it at the time it comes on, I could always watch it back at my leisure when I want to. But,
Yeah.
so yes, yes,
But you see, but Victor's his stream, and though you can watch it backwards and you can connect back into that energy,
yes,
he's
yes,
having a service for folks who want that fellowship to gather together, but don't want the dogma and that exists within
mhm,
the predominant religious organizations that are flowing around in our country right now, and you're looking.
right.
So he fills a very valuable
He
role
does.
in our world today, in having a more of a new age style church service, because a lot of people, they get into alternative spiritualities, but they don't have
Yes.
a support network or anything in order to come together, to have fellowship together, and that's where what he
Mhm.
does is so valuable. Now, I
Yes.
think having something like that in person would be even more valuable,
Oh, it would
but,
be.
but,
It would
but
be.
that's
I
a lot
just
harder
love that
because
what he does there. That's
yes,
positive energy and that
yeah,
loving energy is just amazing. And it's what we all need.
yes,
It's what we
Yeah.
all need. We do.
Mhm.
We really do.
Yeah.
So, yes, Nancy says nature is her church. Exactly. Church is
Yeah,
what you make of it. Church is not the building.
that's what my
I think
that's
that's
what
where
my
people get confused. Church is not the building.
yeah.
So,
Well,
yes,
that's the thing
yes,
is we kind of think of it like a building, but it never was. It was just the group. It was the body of the people who
yes,
met together.
yes,
And
exactly, exactly. So, I wanted to move on in our conversation to, and we talked about the shifting in roles and the emotional landscape of caregiving. And I wanted to talk about the physical and the mental decline that can also go with the caregiver. So, we have common, of course, the person who we're caring for, the common issues are memory loss, decreased mobility, chronic conditions, and it's how do we prepare for those things emotionally and logistically.
mm,
That can be a very different because we don't like to see our loved ones in that stage of their life, when they're going through those type of things. And basically, our loved ones, of course, we know that they may lose mobility, like my mother did. She lost mobility, or they may forget our names, and they may forget so many things, and struggle to deal with daily tasks. And it can be very, very scary. And it can also be a trigger for our own fears about aging and what's going to happen when we get to that point, and
yeah.
who's going to be caring for us or doing the things for us that we're doing for our loved ones.
Mhm.
And so, what we have to remember, is that we have to bring in that compassion, um, and just formed, just bring in that compassion and that information. And if we're experiencing that cognitive decline in a loved one, like the dementia or the Alzheimer's, which are the two most popular ones, then we need to, kind of share those firsthand insights and helpful routines with
Mhm.
others. So share those with our other friends or family, or people who are going through the same thing and may not know how to handle it, especially if we've already dealt with it.
And so
So,
Madam talks about a service that is near where she is. That's in a it's a Lutheran service in a pagan setting, and so Nancy's Crow said it took 2 years following my husband's passing to find myself again, and it was an honor
yes,
caring for him, but it took its toll. And then there's the fact that, like, if I talk about the neighbors up the street um where the caregiver went before the person they were caregiving for.
yes.
Or and that happened in one of my friends who was one of my professors in college. His wife, he went before his wife went, and he was his wife's caregiver. And
Yes. And
yeah,
that's devastating too, because we have to make concessions that, this is something that can take us out of here because we may end up getting sick ourselves in our role as the caregiver. There's
yeah,
a lot of stress that goes with the role of being a caregiver, so much stress. We really have to take care of ourselves. And it's not being selfish. We have
yeah,
to take the time for ourselves. We just can't, like I say all the time, we can't pour from an empty cup.
mhm,
So we really have to take the time to care for ourselves as well as what we're doing for the person that we're a caregiver to, and making sure that, God forbid, we end up getting sick in this process, or we know that, my God, we're so tired or we're feeling a different way. We need to take care of ourselves and get ourselves checked, but we also need to make concessions so that, God forbid, something happens to us and that takes us out of here, for our loved one that we were caring for.
yeah.
So
Well,
we've got to make the concessions for that.
like of the horror stories that I've heard about what I mean, when you talk about the insurance agencies want is for every single American to be wearing a device that shows what their health is in order for them
Right.
to be covered. So you pay your $1,000 a month, but if you aren't within the industry standards for what your health should be, then they won't pay for anything. And so
Right.
then maybe it's that you have somebody monitoring you all the time. This is like nobody wants that invasion of
Mm,
privacy, but if
absolutely not.
if that was what the case was, then it would force you as a caregiver to take care of yourself too.
Yes, yes. That part. Ding
In
ding
in
ding.
in
That
in
part.
in that sense, and that because I just thought just occurred to me, and
Right. Right. Right.
uh,
And I never did get to say hi to Maruta, beautiful Maruta, and she said that the the movie The Haunting is actually about caregiving. I did not. I don't even think I've seen that movie.
yeah, because it probably was a horror film, and I don't know if I've seen that.
Yeah, I have not seen that.
Mhm.
So, and then so we talked. We've so far we've covered the shift in roles of a caregiver and the emotional landscape that caregiving is not a single emotion because it's not a linear thing, and the physical and the mental decline, of our loved ones.
Mhm.
And um one of the next things that goes along with all of this is daily care realities. Hi, Julianne.
Hi,
And
Julianne.
Maruta said it is a scary movie. Yeah, Maruta, I wouldn't be seeing that. I cannot, now that I'm 60, about to be 61 in a month, I do not watch any horror movies anymore because I don't want that in my spirit all night.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't watch.
Mhm.
Um, but people often romanticize caregiving, um, which sometimes that works. But we need to discuss really daily task as a caregiver. So the daily task of cooking and doling out medication and hygiene and being on 24/7 because it's like you're on 24/7. And that's why today has been such a special day for me that I did not have to get up this morning and do a live stream and be on for 4 hours.
Yeah,
And I just got to have that break and that rest and that peace of mind. And yes, being a caregiver is kind of similar. You have to be on it, on it, on it from the time you wake up until the time you go to bed, if you even go to bed, because you're worried about your person. So do you get the ample rest that you need? Do you have other things in place for somebody else to come in? Maybe you have somebody who makes some meals for you once a week so you don't have to do that. Or maybe you have somebody who can help you give mom a bath or do something, or a dad, or take care of something while you go out and get a coffee or take some time for yourself, or just go out for a drive or a walk or whatever it is. Read a
yeah.
book, go to the library or do something.
Mhm.
So it can be, the realities of that. A lot of people do romanticize it, but it's a lot of hard work and it's a
Yeah.
lot of stress. It's a lot of
Well, it's
stress on the
like
caregiver, a lot of stress.
my brother-in-law thinks I'm lazy, and he said I just need to, your mother's fine. She doesn't need a supervisor all the time. Your brother's just lazy, and of course he's always thought I was lazy anyway. So
Right,
that's
right,
nothing new, you know.
right. Well, has he come and stayed there with his mother in law to see the things that she's dealing with on a daily basis? I bet you not.
He doesn't like his mother-in-law.
Okay, well, there you have it. There you have it, Bill.
Well, I mean, his folks are still alive, they're together, and then his one of his brothers just lives down the street, and but
Right,
he hasn't gone through the loss of a parent yet, and
right, right.
so he
And
has no idea.
people are so easy to talk about things, just like I was saying to you about somebody telling me on social media that I just need to get over it. and all of that. It's very easy for people to say that when they haven't dealt with what you've dealt with, or they're
Well,
not dealing with what you're dealing with. It's easy
exactly.
for people to speak out of their ass, excuse my language, and to just say stuff because they're not in it.
They're
They're
not
not in it. And if the shoe was on the other foot, they wouldn't even be able to do the things that you and I have done as a caregiver,
yeah.
at all,
Well,
at all.
it's easy to play a game when you're sitting on the sidelines or from
Yes.
the stands. It's very difficult. I used to play a lot of chess when I was younger, and when you're watching the game, you can see all the
Mhm.
different things that each of the players should do. But when you're sitting in that hot seat, it takes that's why all those damn chess masters are so damn brilliant, is that 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 it's very difficult to, maybe you are anticipating potential 10 moves ahead, but you didn't anticipate that one move that your opponent made, because you didn't see it, because you couldn't see it, because one, you're on a different point of view. But when you are,
Yeah.
I think that's where the genius of chess comes, is the players, is that they are chess masters because they pull themselves out of the game and look into it in a different viewpoint, and be able to look
Hmm.
at it from a different viewpoint, and that's what separates them from everyone else. And so,
Right.
being able, and so, so if you were to look at that situation, and this situation is that you are in the game and you are playing it, but maybe at the same time, but those people are watching in as spectators. They see a
Right.
different
Right.
thing going on than what you can see.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. We've got a lot of things here in the chat. And Madame Maruta was saying about the movie, The Haunting, is the gist of the movie is that the person in the movie sacrifices herself to the point of dying.
Yeah.
And I guess as a caregiver. And
Mhm.
Nancy said that caring for her mother was a true blessing and it was a beautiful experience. And I
Mhm.
love that. I love that. And Julianne said that yes, you have to do self care. And we do. We have to take care of ourselves above all else
Yeah.
because if we run ourselves ragged, like that person in the movie that Maruta was talking about, what good is it going to do? We're going to
Yeah.
be the one ending up on the other side, and our loved one is still going to be here needing somebody to care for them, and we're not going to be here anymore. So
Mhm.
we have to really take care,
Yeah.
of ourselves,
Yeah.
And hi, Julie. I didn't say hi to you, Julie. And Nancy said that the mental anguish regarding the process can be daunting,
Yes.
and there's no time or space for yourself. It's easy to get lost in that, and it really is easy to get lost in that.
Mhm.
So yes, yes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I Part of my self-care, well, is doing the YouTube, because I get trapped. I get to go spend some time in my own
Mhm.
world,
Right.
while I can't leave.
Yes.
And then, some of the pressures of it is that you can't leave, or you have to be flexible. You can,
Right.
like, we had planned to go to the 4th of July thing in the local town, to go to the parade and everything, and I, go to the barbecue at the church, but it just didn't happen.
Right.
Mother, and actually, a lot of it is I didn't actually want to go. It was,
Right. Right.
part of it was that, yeah, we could have gone, but really, really, I just didn't want to go. I didn't want to
Right. Right.
be on the highway. I didn't want to do it. And so,
Right.
she ended up in the ER twice, taking care of boys and overseeing the care of your grandparents and their 1 acre of land. Yeah, yeah. And your husband wasn't understanding until he cared for his parents. Yeah. See,
Mm.
that's the thing about it, is that is
Yes.
we oftentimes, especially as men, we tend to lack that empathy, and because it's
Mhm.
there's a lot of it, just being a that you, you go to a job, and you go to a job you don't like, or you go to a job and you have to be a rule person or whatever it is, and empathy is something that gets into the way. But we take these skills and we work out in the world, and then we bring that stuff back into the home, and that
Right.
oftentimes just doesn't work because
Right.
you have that lack of understanding
Yes.
other people, and then because there's just a lot of people that are in that place that because it takes a lot of
Yes.
work. Yeah, he's
Exactly.
it takes a lot of work to be able to listen to other people, or like I I think I gained a lot of empathy. I've had a lot of empathy through time, but I
Mhm.
off. I've shut that off in many cases. And then, but when in 2020, when they shut the restaurants down, and I came home, and entertaining myself with in that period of the COVID lockdowns, or if that's what they were. I don't know if that's what they were. I think we called that. We didn't have that in this country. They had it in China. They had it in other places. They didn't have it really didn't have it here. It's
Right.
something
Right.
like it. Yes, they had rules in places,
Mhm.
and but I got to started to spend time observing, being quiet and observing the dog, and observing the animals and all of that, and I kind of got this realization. It's like, oh my gosh, this dog is talking. These animals, they have personalities. You watch the cows, and you look at them. Oh, they're all unique individuals.
Yes.
Every single one of them is an
Yes.
and then you think, I wonder, but maybe these squirrels and these other things, that if you welcome hunter, and then if they weren't locked in that fight or flight
Mhm.
survival mode, you might actually see their individual personalities too. But I actually did kind of see some of those individual personalities in the wild turkeys when they came in, and they were like in this area for like 3 years before somehow
Wow.
they got them like chased out into another area. And but this one day, it's right out the back here in the apple tree. Well, one of the turkeys flew up into the tree, and it was knocking the apples down, eating them in there, and then knocking the apples down to feed everyone else. And then it would be like, you'd be like, see that, watch the turkey, and then they started going over to the other side of the fence, but they couldn't. This one, now there was a hole in the fence just like a foot away, but it couldn't see it. It couldn't see the hole in the fence to go through the fence. And then it was getting frantic, running back and forth, back and forth. How do I get through the fence? Oh, all my peeps are on the other side of the fence. I got to get over there. And they were kind of caw caw caw. They're making their turkey
Right.
noises.
Right.
And so you gotta come with us. We're moving on. We're moving on. And it was like, I can't get across the fence. Can't. And then it's like all the time there was a hole right there, and I couldn't see it.
Right.
And
Right.
but then it took the tremendous energy that it had to fly over the fence, because it takes a lot of energy for them wild.
Yes, it does. They're very
But,
big
but
birds.
that kind of shows that there was that you could see a bit of the personality of that turkey, and how frantic it was, the panic, and you could see it. You could just see it in its body language and everything. And so that in some sense of these everything shutting down was this huge blessing for me, because it taught me that everything has some kind of a level of consciousness, and everything has some kind of a individual life,
Mhm.
you know.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then it kind of puts your eating into a totally different, when you think of that, we all feed on life. We feed, from the plants,
Mhm.
animals, and everything. And maybe I'm guilty of not, but I have. in the past been more, to say your prayers of thankfulness for that, and
Yes,
something that,
absolutely.
one
Absolutely.
should do because the of the ancient peoples, they all had the rituals of when they took a life, when they took one of their
Yes.
animal life,
Yes.
have a ritual behind that, and when we don't do that in in our society anymore, but maybe we should do that because to be thankful for all
Yes.
those things too.
Yes. And that's something, yeah, my daughter and I do every time we eat too, is, we give thanks. A lot of people don't do that, and also the thing now too is you want to know where your food is coming from and how it's sourced. I know this is a whole nother topic, getting off topic. And is it humane or
Yeah,
inhumane and all those
yeah,
things? So, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And you saying about the turkey and not seeing the whole, well, that gets us to our next topic, which
mhm,
is self care is non negotiable. And we have to say, we matter too, right? And
mhm,
we could get burnout that sneaks up on us so quickly. And so just like that turkey, that the turkey's family is, everybody's moving on, that flock is moving on, and the turkey's like, oh my god, I can't get through there, and the hole is right there. Well, that's just like with us. We have to learn how to physically, emotionally, spiritually get our rest, therapy if we need it, do movement when we need it, be a part of our community when we need it, seek that
mhm.
joy, not just luxuries or anything, but seek those things that we need to help us in this caregiving process that we do, because those things, are necessities. Self care isn't selfish, it's survival.
Yeah.
And that's something that most people who are caregivers, they don't get. You don't want to be a martyr to the person you're caregiving, because that's not getting you anywhere and it's definitely not getting them anywhere. You need to take care of yourself in the process. In the process. So,
Mm.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Have to
so what
take
are you
care of
thinking,
myself.
Bill? How's this conversation going? Are you ready to, or do you want to keep going, or do we want to end this conversation?
Well, we might end the conversation and then maybe we can come back to it at a later time, but maybe like in maybe next month or something like that.
That would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. And
Now
I
now
want to, go ahead, Bill.
I I used following something that Ramon talked about in in choosing pages for your bibliomancy. I took this top and it had
Mm.
15 spots on it, and this other one has 9.
Ooh,
Mm, there's 1,500 and some change pages in my missile, and
yes.
I used that a little bit earlier to pull a page out, and I thought maybe I would just read some of what was on that page, if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay. So this is from Ezekiel. I too will take from the crest of the cedar, from its topmost branches, tear off a tender shoot and plant it on a high and lofty mountain. On the mountains, heights of Israel, I will plant it. It shall put forth branches and bear fruit and become a majestic cedar. Birds of every kind shall dwell beneath it, every winged thing in the shade of its boughs, and all the trees of the field shall know that I, the Lord, bring low the high tree, lift high the lowly tree, wither up the green tree, and make the withered tree bloom.
Oh,
And
I
I was
love
thinking,
that.
it's like thinking in terms of that with
Yes.
self care but
Yes.
then you have this that just the life that is there. Anyways,
Yes. Yes.
yeah,
That's so apropos. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I did get a little quote for today. And that quote is: caregiving is the act of holding another's dignity in your hands while
Mhm.
still taking care or remembering your own.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's
yeah.
kind of what I had thought about in taking on this job is because part of this job is that you're advocating for somebody else's dignity.
Yes, indeed.
And
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
and 'cause then granted the person's, they maybe towards the end you do you lose your own agency, but you want to foster an environment so that the
Mhm.
person has agency for as
Yes.
long as possible.
Yes. Exactly. For as long as possible.
Long as possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Indeed. Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this conversation. Good conversation again, Bill.
Yeah.
And Julie said it was a great topic. So
Well, and
yeah, and
it is.
Julie did say, you read what Julie said earlier, and she said that now that's her ex-husband after all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, sometimes those relationships are not so easy to break
No, they're
because
not. Yeah.
those marriage relationships, especially when there are
Yes.
businesses in
Yes.
businesses involved in those relationships, and your married partner is also your business partner.
Yeah.
When those things go wrong, when those marriage relationships
Hmm.
go wrong, those business partnerships are harder to unwind than
Yes, very hard to.
to
Right.
unwind. So it's
Right.
like I've because the other night in Tools of Fortune, somebody was asking, they're about business. Holy some and my I didn't need cards to tell them about about the fact that when you take on business partners,
Mhm.
you damn well better know them really, really well,
Yeah, you better.
because it's like a marriage relation. It's like a
Yes.
marriage, and it's more deeper because business partnerships are harder to unwind than marriages are to unwind.
Yes, they are.
And and so yeah, and that's the one thing that a lot of people don't think about before they go into a business relationship with another person, is that because I think it's like, but a lot of people go into those relationships and it's just fine. It's just like marriages, it's just fine. You end up being in that partnership for 50 years and you love every moment of it. Or you're in that marriage for 50, 60 years, and yes, you've had your hard times and your good times and your bad times, but overall it was like an experience of where you loved every moment of it. And people have that experience, but then there's still equally as number of people who don't have that experience, you know, and they're in business with somebody who turns out to be a crook, and and
It happens all the time.
and that does happen all the time too, because a lot of it is like, well, maybe there's substance abuse involved, or the fact that the sins of the human being that that we that all of not all of us, but most of us have a lot of these same flaws, and
We
especially when it
do.
comes to money, we have these same flaws,
We do.
and it's why a lot of lottery winners, that they end up worse off after they win $100 million than they were before.
Right.
Because of those things of what happens when you suddenly come into a ton of money, and what happens. And I have one of my cousins, it was one of my dad's first cousins, and the only one that, his mom didn't come to America. She stayed behind, and when he inherited like a $500,000, and and it's all gone. It was gone within just a couple of years. But then he got married to a woman from Thailand in there, and so as soon as the pretty much and she ended up getting Swedish citizenship, and as soon as she got Swedish citizenship, she left.
Wow.
And then he lost contact with her and the children that he had helped to raise.
Right.
Everything.
Wow.
Like, as soon as they got citizen, it gone. And it was just like, well, was this a relationship of usury? Did she actually really love him, or was it just that she just wanted that
Right.
thing? And
Right.
then
You never know.
but he spent most of that money, like helping her get a business and
Right.
Thailand and
Right.
stuff like that. And so it's just like they weren't thinking straight. And then he was like flying cousins from Portland over to Thailand, and he didn't fly me, but I didn't have the time.
Right.
But
Right.
it's just like, the money just was just going like that, and
Yes. Yes.
go like crazy. Yeah. Well, welcome,
Hi
Celine.
there, Selena.
Yeah. Stopping in to say hello. Yeah, we say hello right before we leave here. But
Yeah,
anyway,
we're on our way out. We're on our
yeah,
way out.
yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
that's all I gotta say. I can just rant on those kind of topics
I
forever.
know, I know. Nancy says Nancy thanked us both for this conversation.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah,
So this was a good one. It was a good one.
yeah. Well, there's still a lot to talk about, and in August we'll come back and talk a
Yes,
little bit more about it.
that'll be
And
wonderful.
all right, and I wanted to thank everyone. Thank Essence of the Moon. Thank Julianne. Thank um Destiny. Thank the more intuitive me, Nancy, Julianne, Hunter, Victor, Madame Maru. I think I mentioned Nancy already, and
Yes.
Audra from Tarot Active,
Yes.
and
Hi, Squirrel Hunter. Some of my people are here.
I see. And then Tarot Ass Backwards was here for a second.
Yes. Gerald was here for a second. Ramon.
Yeah, Ramon. And
Yes.
let me see. Did I forget anybody?
Nope, I think we
Slime
got them all. I think we got
was
Madame Maruta. We got them all.
got them all. We got them
We got
all.
them all. We got them
And
all.
Mama
Thank you,
Sushi.
everybody.
Mama Sushi. All right.
And Mama Sushi. That's right. And
And she was
Audra.
here. And she's very faithful here. Being she
Yes.
just doesn't live too far from me, maybe like probably like 70, 80, 90 miles. I don't know
Oh,
exactly
yeah,
what.
that's not too far.
It's a long ways.
But still close. Still
Still
close.
close.
Nancy is close to me, too. We're in the same state.
Yes.
So,
All
yeah.
right. Well, I want to thank you, Alexi, for coming and
We
spending
said you, Aaliyah. We
many
said you,
minutes with
Aaliyah. We
me.
said Destiny. Bill said
Yeah,
Destiny.
I
So he
did.
did say you.
Yeah, I did
Yes.
see Destiny.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I got you. I got you because I said Destiny, and you're yeah. But
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah.
and thank you, and we will see all y'all the next time. I have like
Yes.
family stuff going on next weekend, so I don't have any shows scheduled for next weekend, and so it would be too much of a pain in the arse to schedule any guests or anything like that for that. And so
Right.
I'm not going to
Right.
do it. And yeah, and
Yeah.
eventually I'm gonna have Lucky Stone 888 on. I think
Ooh.
like in a couple weeks, and it'll be like probably in the evening on a Saturday after he gets done with his Saturday evening show. And I'm gonna bring an artist, just a straight up artist on the show. I just have to coordinate with her schedule. She is somebody I've known for 20 years,
Wow.
and has made her living as an artist. She has made her living, and she's actually almost exactly my same age. She's 6 months younger, or she'll be turning my age in just a couple
Hmm.
months now. And then she lives up in Seattle. I met her in Seattle, and so she will come on I don't know what we'll talk about. Probably we'll just talk about what she does and that. So it'll be some different people's coming on,
Right.
and then what? And then I got my other channel, Tools of Fortune, that I've been doing just sending
Yes.
meets down to do card readings and stuff like that. And that's it.
Yeah.
And we are at right now we're at 818. So that's angel number 818.
Yes. 818. I love it. 818.
Yeah. All right. And thank you very much, Lexi. And I'll see
Thank
you then.
you, Bill.
And
Yes, thank you.
tonight on moon scarabs in orbit.
Yes. I'll
That's
be
that.
on Moon Scarab at 7:30.
Yeah. All right. All right. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye, everybody. Mwah.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you very much for being here.
You're welcome. Love you, Bill.
Yeah.